What happens when a CEO trades his suit for a hard hat, and someone nearly dies in front of him? Miles Donovan stood at the edge of his 12th floor office, looking out at the skyline he helped shape. 11 locations, over 200 employees, and a construction division he'd started with his own hands 15 years ago. But lately, something felt off. He'd spent the last few weeks reading reports that didn't sit right. Delays on a site in South Carolina, 2 resignations in 1 week, a safety complaint that was dismissed by the site manager with a single sentence. Guy was being dramatic. It wasn't enough to go on, but it stuck with him. Miles hadn't been on a site in over a year. He missed it. The dust, the sweat, the feeling of building something real. He needed to see it himself. Not as the boss, as a worker. He shaved the beard he had had for years, dyed his hair darker, and borrowed his cousin's name, Ricky. Construction sites had a mix of day laborers and rotating contractors. No one would question a new guy, especially one sent by a temp agency. The site in question was a new housing complex on the outskirts of Columbia. Half the frames were up already. The morning he arrived, the foreman barely looked at him. "Name?" the burly man asked. "Ricky Salas." "All right, you're with Josh. Framing crew, grab a hard hat, let's go." No background checks, no questions. Just like that, he was in. Josh was a wiry guy in his 30s with a sharp jawline and deep bags under his eyes. "You ever use a nail gun?" he asked, handing one over. "Yeah, been a while though," Miles replied. Josh nodded. "You'll pick it back up. Just don't shoot your foot." By noon, sweat soaked through Miles's shirt. The pace was brutal. Guys were rushing through measurements, skipping double checks. He saw a few workers balancing on beams without harnesses. There was no visible safety officer. No one was checking anything. "Hey," Miles said, trying to keep his tone casual. "Aren't we supposed to be clipped in?" Josh gave a dry laugh. "Supposed to, yeah, but we're behind. Site manager's breathing down our necks." "Who's the manager?" Josh nodded toward a trailer across the lot. "Guy named Brent. Came in about 6 months ago. Doesn't care how it gets done, just wants it done." Later that day, Miles found a water cooler and sat next to a younger worker with a busted boot and a stitched-up eyebrow. "You all right, kid?" Miles asked. "Yeah," the boy said. "Fell through a stair gap last week. Told Brent, but he said if I slow down again, I'm out." Miles clenched his jaw. "That right?" "Yeah, said it's construction, not daycare." That night, Miles sat in a cheap motel, hands shaking. He hadn't realized how bad things had gotten. He'd hired Brent 2 years ago as a site supervisor. The guy had solid experience on paper, but the way these workers talked, something was wrong. The next morning, Miles returned under the same name. Brent was walking the site now, yelling at a plumber to hurry the hell up. He was in his mid-40s, thick neck, shaved head, mirrored sunglasses, the kind of guy who liked being in charge. "Hey you!" Brent barked, eyeing Miles. "You're the new guy, right? Get off your ass. Start hauling that scrap to the dumpster." Miles nodded and moved, noticing the corner of a scaffolding tower missing a pin. He flagged Josh. "That tower's not secure." Josh squinted. "Yeah, we told Brent yesterday. He said don't use it. But of course, that's where the HVAC guys are working." "Seriously?" "Yeah." Just as Miles turned to say something else, a loud crack split the air. A piece of metal, some kind of clamp, came loose from the top of the tower and spiraled down. It hit a man directly on the shoulder. The sound it made, bone, not metal, was enough to silence the entire site. The worker dropped instantly, screaming in pain. Miles was the first to reach him. "He's bleeding," he shouted. "Call an ambulance." "Back up," Brent shouted, running over. "Everyone back up. Someone get the damn first aid kit." "No," Miles growled, kneeling beside the injured man. "You don't get to bark orders now. That tower was flagged. You knew it." Brent's face turned red. "Who the hell are you to tell me?" "I'm the owner," Miles snapped. "Miles Donovan, and you just made the biggest mistake of your career." The silence that followed could have cracked concrete. Brent's sunglasses slid off his face as he stared at Miles like he'd seen a ghost. Josh stood behind Miles, frozen. "Wait, you're the boss?" he whispered. Miles didn't answer. He just looked down at the injured man, who was moaning and clutching his shoulder. "Ambulance is on the way," someone said. Miles stood up and faced the crew. "Everyone stop working, now. No one moves another inch until this entire site is reviewed. And Brent," he turned back to the manager, "you're done. Get off my site." Brent tried to speak, but Miles didn't let him. "Now." The ambulance pulled out just as the afternoon sun began to dip behind the unfinished rooftops, casting long shadows across the site. Dust clung to the air, and tension pressed down like humidity before a storm. Miles stood near the battered scaffolding tower, jaw tight, watching two paramedics drive off with the injured HVAC tech. Neither one had spoken much, just worked fast, with quiet urgency. The man's name was Luis, no last name yet. No one on site seemed to know it. He turned toward the crew. Some were still frozen near their tools. Others had already stepped back, gathering in small, silent clusters. All eyes were locked on him. "Go home," he said. "Clock out. Full pay for today. We'll send instructions tomorrow." Most of them moved without a word. A few nodded. No one argued. Josh lingered near the pickup zone. Arms crossed, face unreadable. Miles walked to him. "You okay?" Miles asked. Josh gave a slow nod, then looked away for a beat. "He's got kids." "You know him?" "Not well, but yeah. 2 little ones. Said he was trying to get off this job and closer to his family. They live up near Winston-Salem. Said this was just till the end of next month." Miles didn't respond right away. The air smelled like hot plywood and engine grease. He looked over at where the scaffold had stood. One of the pins was bent barely visible unless you knew what to look for. "Who was in charge of that tower?" he asked. Josh hesitated. "Brent signed off on it, but he told the HVAC sub to make do when they asked for a replacement." "Did he put that in writing?" "No chance." "Who else heard it?" Josh rubbed the back of his neck. "Couple guys." "I can try to get names." "Do that. Quietly." Miles walked toward the site trailer. Inside, the air conditioning hummed against the stifling heat. Brent's tool belt hung on the back of a cracked leather chair. His hard hat was still on the desk, alongside a clipboard with subcontractor logs. A young woman sat at a folding table, typing on a laptop. She looked up as Miles stepped in. "I'm guessing you're not really Ricky." "No. I figured the second you told Brent to get off his own site." "What's your name?" "Marcy." "What's your role here?" "Project coordinator, mostly admin, scheduling, vendor contact, payroll entries." "You report to Brent?" "Technically, but he doesn't read anything I send unless it's got something to do with inspections or deadlines." Miles stepped closer. "Did you know that scaffold was compromised? I flagged it last week, sent pictures, even sent a copy to the regional office. Anyone respond?" "No. Brent told me to let the guys handle site details. Said I was just the paper girl." He stared at her for a long second. "Print every communication you've got related to safety issues. Every email, every text. I want it by tonight." Marcy stood without hesitation. "You got it." Miles left the trailer and called his operations director, Gloria. She picked up fast. "Talk to me," she said. "I need a regional safety officer and legal counsel on site tomorrow morning, early." "What happened?" "Worker injury, serious. Brent's out effective immediately." "Understood. You want backup crews?" "Not yet. Freeze all movement." "We're not touching this site until we've got a full audit." Gloria paused. "And the worker?" "In surgery. I'll get more info soon." He hung up and walked to his rental car. The moment he sat down, his phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," he answered. "Ricky?" said a voice. "Not anymore." It was Josh. "I got one of the HVAC guys to talk. Name's Andre. Said Brent told them flat out to stop whining about baby safety crap. Said if they didn't like it, he'd find someone who worked faster." Miles let out a breath through his nose. "That's enough." He also said they've been skipping morning checks for weeks. Brent didn't want to pay the overtime. "Thanks, Josh. I'll handle it from here." He spent the next hour at a nearby urgent care, getting a minor cut on his arm, cleaned up one he hadn't even noticed during the chaos. The nurse recognized him from a local magazine cover, but didn't say anything until he was leaving. "You're with Donovan, right?" she asked. "Yeah." "My husband applied there twice. Never heard back." Miles paused. What's his trade? Electrician, journeyman, good one. But he's older 53, white hair. Think they passed on him because of that. Who interviewed him? Don't know, just sent in an app. Never even got a call. He took her name and number, promised nothing, but it stuck with him. By the time he returned to the motel, Marcy had emailed him a zip file with over 70 flagged incidents. Unstable equipment, unmarked hazards, complaints ignored or dismissed. One email from a plumber described a near miss involving a power tool left running. Brent's response? Tell him to open his eyes next time. The next morning, Miles arrived before sunrise. A black SUV waited by the gate, Gloria inside, already on her second coffee. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, and had been with the company since year 3. She stepped out, handed him a clipboard. You're going to want to see this, she said. Something new? HR records. Brent's been hiring labor through an unregistered broker. Cash jobs, no background checks, no insurance. Miles flipped through the pages. None of it was in the official logs, not even the workers' names. Why? Cheaper, faster, fewer questions, but illegal. Can we ID the broker? Working on it. Marcy's digging. She's sharp. Keep her on salary. She's staying. Gloria nodded. And Brent? Already gone, but I want a full background sweep. If this happened here, it happened somewhere else too. The legal team arrived next, followed by 2 safety officers from the regional division. They walked the site in silence, snapping photos, making notes. At least 6 violations jumped out within the first 20 minutes. By mid-morning, Josh returned. You still running solo? Miles asked. Yeah, no one's sure what's happening. Some guys think the whole job's dead. It's not, but it's paused. You're not under Brent anymore? Josh looked relieved. Who's in charge? You are. Temporary foreman until we vet a permanent one. Josh blinked. Me? You've got the trust of the crew. You speak up when it counts. That's leadership. He didn't argue. Later that afternoon, Miles visited the hospital. Luis was out of surgery, heavily medicated, but stable. His wife sat beside him, holding his hand, eyes rimmed red. She didn't know who Miles was at first. When he introduced himself, her expression shifted from confusion to something colder. You're the owner? She asked quietly. Yes. Her voice shook. My husband almost died. He told me he kept asking about that equipment, that no one listened. I know, and I'm sorry. He won't be paying a single bill. We'll make sure of it. She didn't thank him, just looked back at her husband. Miles stood there for a moment longer, then left. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat at the motel desk, staring at a blank pad of paper. Then he picked up a pen. He wrote 3 words at the top. Never again here. The following morning, the site was silent except for the low hum of generators and the occasional crunch of gravel under boots. The crew hadn't returned, yet Miles had ordered a full stop until safety compliance was reestablished. The only people on the premises were the audit team, Gloria, and a handful of retained subcontractors who were helping the inspectors document the state of the job. Josh stood near the temporary office trailer, flipping through a revised job log Marcy had prepared. He looked up when Miles approached. Luis's wife called this morning, Josh said. He's still in recovery, but they think he'll regain full use of his arm, eventually. Miles nodded once. Good. Keep checking in with them, quietly, no pressure. Inside the trailer, Marcy had transformed a folding table into a command center with blueprints, flagged reports, and a legal pad filled with handwritten notes. She looked up from her laptop. Payroll's a mess, she said. Brent was logging hours for workers who don't exist. I found entries for 2 names that never signed in once. Fake workers? Miles asked. Looks like it. I cross-checked against ID scans from the temp agency. 2 of the names weren't issued badges, no photos, nothing. Gloria leaned in from the doorway. Could be ghost employees, padding invoices, pocketing the difference. We'll dig deeper, Miles said. If Brent was embezzling, we'll press charges. Marcy pushed a folder forward. There's more. Remember that broker he was using for day labor? I found an invoice trail. They're not licensed, no insurance, and their address is a mailbox at a strip mall. Miles opened the folder. The name at the top was Ridgeway Personnel Services. I want every site we've worked in the last 6 months checked for this name. If they're anywhere else, shut it down. Gloria nodded. Already started. We've got a compliance officer pulling files from Houston and Tampa. If it's a pattern, we'll catch it. Outside, a black pickup pulled into the gravel lot. A man in steel toe boots stepped out, face taut, clipboard in hand. He wore a state safety inspector badge on his vest. He introduced himself as Daniel Vega and asked for site access. Miles shook his hand. You've got full clearance. As Vega walked the perimeter with one of the regional officers, Josh reappeared from the side of the trailer. Got a call from one of the HVAC guys, Josh said. Name's Andre. He said a couple of the subs are still trying to finish side work off the books. Said someone from the drywall crew was told to just finish the punch list quietly while we're shut down. Here? Miles asked. Josh nodded. Far end of the west wing. Miles didn't wait. He walked the gravel path, passing the silent concrete shell of the building until he reached the far corner. Sure enough, 2 men were inside, one on a ladder, the other rolling a bucket of joint compound toward an unfinished wall. Hey, Miles called out. The man on the ladder turned, confused. Delivery? No, shut it down, now. We're just finishing up. You weren't cleared to be here. Who told you to keep working? The taller one looked away. The other finally answered. Some guy named Eddie said we could keep going as long as we didn't use power tools. Eddie who? Didn't give a last name. Miles took photos of their badges, then pointed to the site exit. Pack up. You're done for today. We'll call your contractor. He called Gloria as soon as they were gone. Find out who Eddie is. If he's giving unauthorized orders, he's out. Back at the trailer, Vega had returned. He placed a filled-out violation form on the table. You've got 6 major infractions, he said, 3 related to fall protection, 1 electrical, and 2 structural load issues. That scaffold tower wasn't the only problem. What's the timeline to fix it? Miles asked. Depends on how fast you act. You'll need to recertify the entire framing setup and bring in third-party inspectors. No workers can return until that's done. Miles signed the form. Understood. Vega paused before leaving. You're doing the right thing? Most owners would have tried to bury this. I don't run most companies. As the day wore on, Miles reviewed status reports from other sites. 2 additional locations had minor issues, but nothing close to Columbia. Still, he flagged them for surprise inspections. He wasn't taking chances. That evening, he met Gloria and Marcy at a local diner to go over next steps. They sat in a corner booth, away from the chatter of regulars. A waitress refilled their coffee without asking. Marcy slid a new report across the table. Luis was technically classified as a contractor. That means he's not covered under our workers' comp policy. Miles leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles. Unacceptable. We'll cover everything out of pocket. Medical, rehab, lost wages, retroactive employee classification if we have to. Gloria hesitated. It'll set a precedent. Then let it. Marcy looked up. You're going to get pushback from legal. They work for me, Miles said. Not the other way around. The next morning, Miles called a full staff meeting. Not with the site crew, those workers were still off-site, but with the regional managers and department heads. They gathered in a rented conference room at a nearby hotel. He stood at the front, no slides, no notes. We failed, he said. Not just Brent, all of us. We built a system where speed outpaced safety, where numbers replaced names, and where silence became normal. No one interrupted. I went undercover because reports stopped making sense. What I saw on that site should never happen anywhere, let alone under our name. One man is in a hospital bed because we didn't do our jobs. He stepped forward. From now on, every site gets a dedicated safety officer, not part-time, full-time. Every crew gets 8 hours of certified training before stepping onto a job. No more verbal warnings. Every complaint gets logged and reviewed within 24 hours. And if I ever hear that someone ignored a safety concern to meet a deadline, they will not be working here the next day. He let the silence land before continuing. I started this company with a borrowed truck and a used nail gun. I've slept in unfinished basements to meet deadlines. But I never cut corners on people. We don't build houses at the expense of lives. One of the operations leads, a woman named Tasha, raised her hand. What about hiring practices? That temp agency Brent used, we never vetted them. We're overhauling vendor protocols, Miles said. From now on, no subcontractor or labor broker works with us unless they're licensed, insured, and verified. No exceptions. Even if it slows us down, she asked, especially if it does. After the meeting, he pulled Josh aside outside the hotel. Tomorrow, I want you to meet with HR. We're formalizing your role as site foreman. Full benefits, company truck. Josh blinked. I mean, I appreciate it, but I never asked for that. You didn't have to. You earned it. He paused. One more thing. I want you to help us build a new onboarding module for new hires. Something real, not just a checklist. I want every worker to know their voice matters. Josh nodded slowly. Yeah. All right, I can do that. That afternoon, Miles returned to the Columbia site one last time before the repairs began. The scaffold had been dismantled. Hazard tape fluttered in the wind. He walked the perimeter slowly, taking in every detail, the cracked concrete, the unfinished beams, the silence. Then he pulled out his phone and called Luis's wife. I'm not calling for updates, he said. I just want you to know we're covering everything. And when Luis is ready, there's a role for him here, on his terms. There was a pause. Then quietly she said, he still can't lift his arm, but he asked about the job this morning. Miles let out a breath. Tell him we'll wait. 3 weeks later, the Columbia site reopened under strict oversight. The scaffolding had been rebuilt from the ground up, reviewed and signed off by 2 separate third-party inspectors. A new safety officer, Angela Ruiz, a former OSHA investigator, was now permanently stationed on site, clipboard in hand and eyes sharper than nails. Miles returned quietly that morning. No disguise, no hard hat. Just a clipboard and a list of names. Gloria walked beside him, pointing out the revised crew structure. Josh was now officially leading the framing crew. His name was on every safety report, every labor log. Marcy had been promoted to regional admin coordinator. Her role now included auditing all field communication between site managers and corporate. She was across the state today, training another coordinator in Augusta. Miles stopped near the southwest quadrant of the site, where fresh lumber stood stacked under a temporary awning. I want to meet the new hires, he said. They're in orientation, Gloria replied. Angela's giving them the walkthrough. He followed the sound of voices to the break tent, where a group of 6 workers sat around a folding table. Most looked in their 20s, except for one older man, white hair, weathered face, calluses deep as scars. Angela nodded at Miles as he stepped in, but didn't pause her briefing. You see something unsafe, you stop work, she told the group. You don't ask permission, you don't wait for someone else. You stop. Got it? A few nodded quickly. One of the younger men raised his hand. What if our foreman says to keep going? Angela didn't flinch. Then your foreman's finished. There's no middle ground. Miles waited until she finished before stepping forward. Welcome, he said. I'm Miles Donovan. I started this company with my own hands, and I nearly lost someone because we stopped listening to the people who do the real work. He looked directly at the older man. You applied here before, didn't you? The man straightened. Twice. Never heard back. You're here now. You're not a number. If anyone makes you feel like one, you come straight to me. The man gave a slow nod. Name's Henry. Glad to have you, Henry. As the new crew dispersed toward their assignments, Angela stepped beside Miles. Field culture's shifting, she said. Still tension, but fewer corners being cut. Guys are calling things out now. One flagged a loose anchor bolt yesterday. Would have gone unnoticed before. Miles nodded. Keep pushing. Across the lot, Josh was walking the perimeter with 2 crew leads, pointing out new hazard markers and updated tool storage zones. When he saw Miles, he broke off and walked over. We've got a problem with one of the subs, Josh said. Drywall crew sent a guy who doesn't have steel toe boots, tried to sneak by in sneakers. Send him home, Miles said. Already did, but his supervisor called and started yelling about delays and micromanaging. Said we're making it impossible to hit deadlines. Miles didn't hesitate. They're done. Pull the crew. We'll find someone else. Josh exhaled. That's what I thought. Just wanted to be sure. We're not bargaining with compliance anymore. Later that day, Gloria called Miles over to the trailer. Inside, she had a file open on the desk. "We got a call from the Department of Labor," she said. "A complaint was filed against Ridgeway Personnel Services last year. Discrimination, wage theft, and false classification of workers." Miles leaned over the file. "Who filed it?" "A man named Edgar Nunez. Said he worked 3 jobs under Ridgeway. Never got paid for the last one. When he complained, they told him his documentation was invalid even though he had a valid work permit. We have his contact? I already reached out. He's in Charlotte, looking for steady work." Miles looked up. "Get him in. I want him on payroll, benefits included. If he wants to work, we'll find a place." "Done. And Ridgeway?" "Shut down as of last week. State audit forced them to close." Miles nodded once. "Good." That evening, Miles met with Luis for the first time since the accident. They sat outside a rehab clinic in a quiet courtyard, the sky streaked with orange and purple. Luis wore a brace on his shoulder and moved slowly, but he was upright, focused. "I heard you offered me a role," Luis said. "I did. Whatever you're ready for." "I won't rush you." Luis glanced at the horizon. "I don't think I can swing a hammer anytime soon." "You don't have to. We've started a field safety mentorship program. We need people who've been through it who can teach new hires what matters." Luis looked over. "That's real?" Miles nodded. "Started last week. You'd be the first." Luis didn't answer right away. Then he extended his left hand, the good one. "I'll do it." Miles shook it firmly. "Welcome back." The next morning, Luis's hiring paperwork was filed. Angela added him to the orientation roster for the following week. His new title, Field Safety Advisor. 2 days later, Miles returned to headquarters in Atlanta. He walked into the main floor unannounced, nodding at reception, but not stopping. The atmosphere was different now, more alert, more engaged. HR had implemented new filters for their hiring system, designed to prevent age bias and silence applications that had previously gone ignored. He stopped by the training center, where a dozen new office hires were watching a video on field operations. On the screen, a worker described how he'd once been told to ignore a frayed harness. The video paused, and the trainer turned to the group. "What's the correct action in this situation?" she asked. One young woman raised her hand. "Report it, stop work, and escalate if needed." The trainer nodded. "Exactly." Back in his office, Miles sat down for the first time in days. He looked at the whiteboard across from his desk. At the top were 3 words, the same ones he'd written in that motel room. "Never again here." Below them was a checklist. Most of the boxes were now ticked. Angela, hired. Luis, rehired, safety role. Josh, promoted, training others. Marcy, new oversight role. Ridgeway, shut down. Policy changes implemented, contracts revised, site audits ongoing. He leaned back, staring at the last unchecked box. Culture reset. That one would take longer. There was a knock. Gloria stepped in. "We've got a request from 2 other site leads," she said. "They want to adopt Columbia's new orientation program." Words getting around. "Make it standard," Miles said. She smiled faintly. "Already drafting the memo." Before she left, she paused at the door. "You know, what you did the going undercover thing, it's not something most people in your position would have done." Miles looked up. "I didn't do it to be noble. I did it because I forgot what it felt like to be on the ground." That won't happen again. That afternoon, he walked through the office, stopping by departments he hadn't visited in months. He asked questions, listened, took notes. No fanfare, no announcements, just presence. Outside, a delivery truck pulled up with new safety gear for the Columbia site. High visibility vests, harnesses, steel toe boots, all top quality, no shortcuts. As the boxes were unloaded, Miles watched from the curb. A young woman from procurement stood nearby, clipboard in hand. "We went over budget," she said cautiously, "by about 20%. Miles didn't blink. "Good." She looked relieved. "I'll adjust the forecast." He nodded, then turned and walked back inside. The company had changed, not with slogans or banners, but with action, with people, with truth. And this time, it would stay that way.